Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 20th of October, comes to you from London. And we see quite a mixed colours on the screen. US markets were down quite sharply yesterday. The energy mix today, all red except for nat gas in the US. So we are seeing a lot of downside there. So we'll look at that in a minute. But first of all, let's just look at the macro. I start with currencies, then looking at indices, and then last of all some commodities. And if we look at the dollar index, remembering this is my weekly, my daily, and my 60-minute chart, the dollar index here rising. So we're seeing here that recovery looking very much like a bottom. It did fall away yesterday, so we are back to short-term bearish, but the dollar longer term looks like it's going through recovery, and that means the euro is looking stronger against the dollar. And if we look at sterling, we're back below the 130 level, and so that also means that we are falling against the euro. We're back below the 110 mark. So sterling is still bearish on all three charts against the euro, with downside targets not activated, so we have to wait for new lows for those to be activated. Looking at Bitcoin, we're sitting at $11,700, so quite a move up this week. We are just nudging that $12,000 mark for the first time in nearly 2 months, so starting to look more bullish there on all three charts if you're following cryptocurrencies. As we said, US markets fell back yesterday. We saw the S&P just steadily decline, just of course struggling to make new highs. The election in the US starting to just weigh a little bit on stocks, and of course we've got to get above that new high to be confident of taking these downside targets off. The Nasdaq was also lower, and we saw just a steady decline there. Quite some key results coming out: Netflix and Tesla. Those will be interesting to watch. And if we look at the Dow, we were down 1.4% as well. So we are just struggling. In fact, the Dow hasn't managed to make a new high since March. So we are seeing that it's been very tech-driven, this recovery in stocks, and it'll be interesting to see whether we can actually make new highs. But we probably have to wait till after the election for that. The futures in the US are actually up this morning. The S&P future up 0.6%, and the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.7%. So having fallen yesterday, it does look like we're going to pare some of those losses by about half. The VIX volatility also rose yesterday, back into the high 20s. This is the fear index, remember. So we are short term seeing that coming back to the fray. 30 points on the VIX, it tends to be the level that we need to worry, and we had a high here of nearly 40 back in September. So until we break those sorts of levels, we can not worry too much about the market. The FTSE future is up 1/3% this morning. The DAX is down just slightly, and the CAC 40 is up. So we are just seeing markets looking fairly mixed. Japan was down 0.7%. The Hang Seng was up just slightly, but it's still looking pretty bearish on the long-term charts. Short-term, we're trending up. And if we look at the Shanghai index, recovery there. China on relatively good financial numbers this week is just starting to improve. We have been flat for a good few months, so it'll be interesting to see whether we can break higher. The Sensex in India up 0.4%, and the Aussie market was actually down 0.7%, so we are just seeing moves lower there. Gold holding on to the $1,900 mark, so it's still short-term bullish, and silver sitting at $24, so that's still looking pretty good. US 10-year yields actually looking higher. We're just seeing that recovery. It'd be very interesting to see if we can come and make a new multi-month high, but we are looking bullish there. Recovery underway, and we're sitting at 0.78% on the yield. That consequently means that bonds are falling. If we look at the German bond, just falling back a little bit, but bond prices have been, of course, rising longer term, while yields have been falling. Taking a look now at the energy mix, Brent crude is down 0.5% this morning. This high is still hanging over the market. So we've been neutral on crude this week. It's hard to see how that will break higher whilst we've got that previous high hangovers and various amounts of uncertainty. The same with WTI. US nat gas sitting at 285, so we have actually risen here. We are seeing storage in the US is actually starting to be less of an issue, and we are seeing prices rising. So US nat gas is really looking good now on that short-term chart. It's only really showed itself in the last 24 hours. It was a difficult call yesterday. We were neutral, but it's starting to look more bullish now. And downside targets, of course, coming off the chart as we break those new highs. RBOB is looking lower, so gasoline prices in the US following crude, but just trending lower, more clearly falling away here with downside targets. Coal is down 1.3%. But has been recovering. Again, we were neutral there. And emissions are really now starting to look much worse. We're seeing here down 2%. Lots of downside targets. 24 is the next level. These round numbers becoming important, but we've clearly turned into bearish mode here. And the bigger downside target is 20 euros. Gas prices were strong yesterday. They're just falling away today. We're seeing NBP down 1.4% in the UK. Dutch gas front month is down 1.8%, and winter gas is down 1.5%. So we are just seeing gas markets coming back, but we've been much more bearish on power markets. There's gas pool, by the way, but on power markets, we're seeing German power baseload electricity down 1.5% on the calendar contract. That is looking pretty bad, making new now 2-month lows, and of course 39 is a level. If we break below 39, that will be very, very bad for prices, but we are seeing downside targets suggesting that will happen. Looking at quarterly gas contract, that's also just breaking lower. French power down nearly 1% this morning. We've been pretty bearish there. That's one of the worst looking markets. And we're seeing Dutch power down 0.25%. It's falling lower as well. And Nordic power has really been plummeting. We've seen that falling lower, and the quarterly contract lower as well. No clear downside targets, made it a hard call. We have got one here of 17.42. That's some 30% lower, so that's a really big move potentially. We haven't got a paint yet on Czech power this morning, but it will go lower as with German power, and UK power just holding up, so it's not falling as heavily as continental power. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.